Canton, Massachusetts is a small town where it seems everyone knows each other. There's a small, classic downtown area featuring places to eat, shop, and socialize. And on Friday, January 28th, 2022, some of the locals were gathering at two of the bars, C.F. McCarthy's and across the street at the Waterfall. Boston police officer John O'Keefe met some buddies at C.F. McCarthy's early in the evening and was then joined by Karen Reed. They then went across the street to the Waterfall to see some more friends, including John's old neighbors, Chris and Julie Albert. Chris owns the local downtown pizzeria and had been texting with John. When midnight arrived, the Waterfall was closing, so a group of folks from the Waterfall headed to Chris's brother's house, Brian Albert. But Chris and Julie did not go. Now, when Karen and John arrived in front of Brian Albert's home, John exited Karen's SUV. Then, according to the lawyers trying this case, he was either murdered by Karen, who backed over him, or he was ambushed inside the Alberts' home and put on the lawn to die and to frame Karen. Karen is now on trial for murder. And today, the jury heard the testimony of Chris and Julie Albert, including important information about their son, who was at Brian Albert's home. Tonight, we examine the testimony, the body language, and the timeline as we continue to investigate the death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Another big day in this big case out of Massachusetts, Norfolk County. Dedham is where the trial is taking place. Canton is where the alleged murder took place. And let's begin talk about Canton, Massachusetts. It's a big part of the story. John's house was in Canton, and John O'Keefe was raising his niece and his nephew, and for years was a part of the community. And when you're raising kids in a community, you get to know other parents, because your kids have games, they have practices, they have recitals, there's back to school night, there's birthday parties, there's sleepovers, all of that. And your children end up helping you develop relationships and make new friends. And you also make friends with people in your neighborhood, because you kind of lean on each other to help each other out. And if you're a single parent like John O'Keefe was, you're going to need a lot of help, obviously. So that brings us to Julie and Chris Albert. They lived right on John Street for a while. They were neighbors, but were they friends or feuding neighbors? I think that question, the answer to that question depends upon who you ask, right? I think the defense is going to have one perspective of this and the prosecution has another. The jury will have to make their decision based upon what they see and hear inside the courtroom, including photos like this, which they're sharing and texting to each other. So Julie and Chris Albert were there at the Waterfall that night. And what kind of night was it at the Waterfall bar? Was it a friendly, fun night? You know, and how do you figure out what was going on here? Well, you watch the video and you listen to the witnesses, just like the jury is. That's the only way we can determine this, right? And what I'm seeing in the video is a friendly, fun night. What I'm hearing from the witnesses is the same exact thing. Whether you're talking about the Alberts and John O'Keefe and Karen Reed and John O'Keefe, everybody's out. It seems pretty normal socializing at a bar, right? You get together, it's a Friday night, big snowstorm coming in, you know, people drinking a little bit and just having fun. And that's what I've seen and heard so far about what's taking place in the bar, which leads me to my next question. Did anyone have a motive here? Did anyone have a motive? Because remember, let's remember where we are in this case, because this is important. Both sides are saying that John O'Keefe was killed, purposely run over or ambushed and killed. So that begs the question, why would anyone want to do that? Well, based upon what we've seen in terms of the interaction like that night, like just before John O'Keefe was allegedly killed by either a group of people in the house or by Karen Reed, now I'm not seeing anything. So either Karen Reed develops this motive or reason in a 5-minute drive from the Waterfall Bar to the Alberts home, or if John O'Keefe actually went into the Alberts home, sometime very quickly someone came up with a reason why there was some sort of a confrontation / ambush. How long did it take for that thing to develop, that reason? Now, I'm kind of sitting in the same place as the jury with you, watching and listening, and I have not seen a motive for anyone on either side to take the life of John O'Keefe on purpose. So today was another big day inside the courtroom. Let's take a look at some of the big moments and big testimony.
How would you describe your relationship with Mr. O'Keefe?
Oh, it was a good relationship, yeah.
Would you consider yourself friends?
Yeah, absolutely.
When Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant come over to the area where you and your wife is, what, if anything, did you observe the defendant?
When they first came over, the defendant came in with a glass beneath her jacket, and I thought that was kind of funny, and I laughed about it and made a comment about it.
And what, if anything, did you notice sort of about the glass? What was in the glass, anything like that?
It was just a tall, like, cylinder glass with some clear liquid in it and a lime.
And that was under her coat when she...
Yeah, it was like she pulled it out.
How would you describe sort of the general sort of tone or demeanor within the group at the Waterfall that night?
It was fine. Everyone's just having a good time.
So no arguments, anything like that?
No, not at all.
And specifically between Mr. O'Keefe and the defendant, what, if anything, did you observe between them?
I didn't notice anything abnormal.
Fair to say you didn't go to 34 Fairview then?
I did not.
What happened after you woke up?
Shortly after I woke up, my wife entered the room, but that was a little bit later. I don't know exactly what time. And she informed me that something had happened to John. I don't know the exact words that she said, but basically that John had died, that he was found somewhere on the front lawn of 34 Fairview.
And when you arrived at your brother's house, who, if anyone, was there?
From what I remember, I was there. My wife was there. My brother Brian, Nicole, Brian Higgins was there. I believe Matt McCabe was there, and Jen McCabe was there.
What was your nickname and your wife Julie's nickname for John O'Keefe?
Mr. Nevercracker.
John O'Keefe complained to you about things that Colin was doing.
Not correct.
He would tell you that Colin used to throw beer cans or beer bottles in his bushes.
That is not correct.
And you thought it would be funny to have a photo taken of you and your wife with drinks in your hand on his property, correct?
Correct.
And when Colin came into your room and he came upstairs, did you have occasion to observe him as far as talk to him of it?
Yes, we talked for a minute. He asked me if I was feeling better. And yeah, we talked for a moment.
What, if any, injuries or anything did you observe on your son Colin?
None.
And what, if anything, did they tell you at that time?
And I asked what's going on. And another maybe 30 seconds went by, and Jen said, something's happened to John. And I said, John, she said, John O'Keefe.
You were aware that she was being arraigned the very next day, were you not?
Yes.
This case involved your family, did it not?
How do you mean it?
Well, you knew that John O'Keefe was found dead on your brother-in-law, Brian Albert's lawn, correct?
Correct.
So necessarily, your family was involved in this case, correct?
Somewhat, yes.
And Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson joining us live from outside the courthouse in Dedham, Massachusetts tonight. Matt, great to see you. To me, relationships are so important in this case, trying to figure out everyone's connection to one another. and trying to uncover if there is a motive anywhere in this case for anyone to take John O'Keefe's life. Let's talk about John O'Keefe and the two witnesses today, Chris and Julie Albert. How did they know each other?
Vinny, nice to see you. So Chris and Julie Albert, this is the first of the Albert family that we've heard so much about, the first two people from that family to take the stand. Chris Albert testified first today, and then his wife Julie was on the stand, and they were really talking about their relationship with the victim in all of this, John O'Keefe, who was their neighbor. They also knew him because their kids knew each other. You mentioned that. John O'Keefe would go to their pizza restaurant on occasion. And then, according to their testimony, they say that they would joke around with John O'Keefe. They even took a picture on his fence because they said that that was being playful. And in response to a situation where he told one of their kids to get off of his yard. Take a listen to this.
He ran across John's lawn one day. This is my littlest son, who I don't even know at the time. He might have been like 9, 10. I'm not sure exactly how old he was. And John yelled something to him, "Hey, kid, get off my lawn." So John was just making a joke. So Dylan got scared. He ran home and told my wife, Julie, and John felt terrible. And John came down the street. John asked what kind of candy Dylan liked. And John brought Dylan a bag of candy and just said, "Hey, I was just kidding."
Now, we also learned more about this couple under cross when the defense was sure to point out that this is the Chris Albert that was helped out by Lieutenant Lank. Remember during his testimony when he talked about that car accident and also the bar fight that he was under investigation for. And then Julie Albert, it came out that she's very good friends with Trooper Proctor's wife, and she's going to be questioned about that more tomorrow morning when she's back on the stand.
Okay, let's talk about more connections here. How about connecting the people from the after party with Julie and Chris and some of the others here?
So we've heard from a lot of friends, both yesterday and today, that were at the Waterfall Bar before it spilled over into that after party. So we have heard from several people, including Kurt Roberts, who is Carrie Roberts' husband. We heard from Michael and Catherine. We heard from Nicholas and Karina, who testified. And then today we heard from Chris and Julie Albert. But the thing about all of these witnesses, none of them went to 34 Fairview for the after party. So we have yet to hear from, and let's put the graph on your screen here, because there's a lot of people to follow in this case. Brian and Nicole Albert, we haven't heard from them. Jennifer McCabe, we haven't heard from Brian Higgins. And we know through the testimony so far that they were at the Waterfall Bar and they were bar hopping that night.
Okay, now, Colin Albert. Some testimony about him, the son of Julie and Chris. What time did he get home? Because the defense seemed like they were very focused on whatever time he came back to his home where Julie and Chris were.
So when we heard about that timeline of effects with him, it was through Julie's testimony. And what she was saying was both she and her husband got home at around midnight. And then she's claiming that 10 to 15 minutes after that, that's when their son walked through the door. And she says that she remembers that because she doesn't go to bed unless she knows where her kids are. And if they are home, then they're home with her. But, you know, she was also asked about any injuries that she possibly saw with him. She said that she didn't notice any injuries, and where he was that night, she says that he was at a friend's house.
Okay. Significant testimony, because I think where the defense wants to go with Colin Albert, trying to put him in the middle of everything happening at the house. But another big day today. Even it was a half day, and it's a big day. It's really unbelievable how things are developing. Matt Johnson, Court TV Crime and Justice correspondent. Thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you.
I want to bring in a special guest tonight, body language expert, author of the New York Times best-selling book, You Can't Lie to Me, and creator of the new free newsletter, In the Driver's Seat. Janine Driver is with us. Janine, thanks so much for joining us. I wanted to take a look at some testimony from Chris Albert regarding when his son came home, because I believe this will be a big, big issue for the defense if they try to somehow point the finger or implicate Chris's son, Colin, in being at the house when all this takes place. So let's take a look first at him testifying on direct examination.
Mr. Albert, as far as your son, Colin, do you know sort of where he was that night?
Yes, so he was at my brother Brian's house for my nephew's birthday.
And he came home sometime after you, is that correct?
Correct.
And essentially you came in, went to bed, so do you know what time your son came home that night?
I know that.
Do you know, just answer yes or no whether you know.
Yes,
And how do you know that, sir?
because he opened the bedroom door and said, "Good night, guys. I love you. I'm home."
And about how long after you got home was it that your son got home?
I'd say within 10 minutes.
All right, Gene, did you pick up anything there?
Oh, come on, Vinny. Did I pick up anything? Of course I did. You see, we see him take the tongue and stick it on the left side of his cheek. I want you to feel what that feels like. Like, do that at home. This is high stress has happened. High level pacifier in the face. The closer we get to the brain, the higher the stress. Listen, Indra Nooyi, former CEO of PepsiCo, she was being interviewed just after Trump became president. She was chosen to be on his panel of executives. As soon as she comes out, Indra Nooyi did this. And you knew, I was watching it, I'm not political, I'm a political idiot. And I'm like, something's happening here. And then the first question was stress related. So we see it right there, you're looping it, your producers are doing a great job. So that high stress, it doesn't belong here. If in fact he was home at 12:15, why are you showing us high stress? Now maybe, let's play devil's advocate, Vinny, and you at home. Maybe it's like, well, because your son's being considered being part of a murder. So then therefore the stress goes high.
Let's take a look now on cross-examination, which is always stressful for anyone on cross-examination. But let's take a look. This is a little longer part of the testimony.
With regard to the timing of how long it took you to go home, I believe your best estimate is about 5 minutes. Is that your testimony? And when I say home, I'm not talking about from D&E Pizza. I'm talking about that early morning when you're at the waterfall.
I understand. Yeah, I'd say around 5 minutes. I think from the waterfall to Maple Street.
Fair enough. So now, if you're leaving the bar like close to 12:14, as indicated on the video, you're getting home somewhere around 12:19, 12:20, correct?
Roughly, yeah.
If you're getting home upstairs to your bedroom around 12:20 and it takes you 15 minutes to go to bed, and that's around 12:35, then sometime after you're asleep, after 12:35, that's when Colin opens the bedroom door, correct?
I don't remember exactly.
Well, it's difficult for you to remember how long you'd been asleep for when Colin opened the bedroom door, correct?
Correct.
You don't know if it was 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or longer, correct?
I don't know exactly.
Right. But it was some time after you fell asleep.
To the best of my recollection.
Okay, Gene, what's going on there?
Whole bunch of stuff, Vinny. We see some contempt happening here, which is a smirk. It's the only unilateral expression on one side of her face, and he goes like this. We saw A-Rod do this when he was lying about taking steroids with Katie Couric back in the day. So moral superiority, it doesn't belong here. Moral superiority is often done by a powerful person who's getting away with deception. And what else does he do? He touches his face. And you see a nose wrinkle a little bit. We saw this with Cato Kalin. When Cato Kalin was on the stand with the O.J. Simpson case, and Marsha Clark said, "Isn't it true you're writing a book or getting this deal?" And he's like this. And so that's what we're seeing right here, which is disgust. It's like, I don't like these questions. High stress, I don't like the questions, and moral superiority, not a good combination for the truth.
Janine Driver, thanks for helping us out. We're going to be calling you a lot more during the course of this trial. Many more witnesses.
Yeah, I'm a Boston girl, I'm from Massachusetts.
There you go.
I appreciate you having me on, Vinny. Thank you.
So you can understand the accent much clearer than sometimes I can. All right. Folks, we got a lot more to get to. We're going to talk about the next morning at Brian Albert's home after John O'Keefe has been taken away. Who is there? Why are they there? We'll bring in our guest. Plus, coming up next hour. Where is Harmony Montgomery? This 5-year-old angel disappeared in 2019, but no one reported her missing or even looked for her for 2 years. She's never been found. So how could a child just vanish and no one says anything? The answer came out during the trial of her father, Adam Montgomery, who had sole custody and beat her to death and discarded her remains. Today was sentencing day, and prosecutors gave Adam Montgomery one more chance to reveal Harmony's location so she could be laid to rest.
Right now, Your Honor, if he tells us where we can recover her and we do so within the next 7 days, we will change our recommendation to 35 years.
We are underway in the trial of doomsday prophet Chad Daybell.
Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty against him.
Investigators have recovered human remains at Chad Daybell's residence.
There's no way, Morgan. I can never come up with this.
His wife, Lori Vallow Daybell, has already been convicted.
Now, will her husband end up with the same fate?
It's just so hard to know where the truth ends.
It's the doomsday prophet, Chad Daybell, on trial.
Turning your attention to the next morning, the Saturday morning of the 29th, about what time was it that you woke up?
I woke up about 8-ish.
And with regard to your nephew, Brian Jr., whose birthday it was now on the 29th, what, if any, sort of tradition do you have with respect to him and his birthday?
Every year on his birthday, I go to Dunkin' Donuts. I get him 6 donuts, and I bring them to the house, and I leave them there with a card before he gets up. So when he wakes up, they're there. I've been doing it for years.
That's Julie Albert testifying about why she went over to Brian Albert's home, the address where all of this took place. The house with the lawn, the yard where John O'Keefe was found dead. She was there the next morning. Here she is describing what happened when she went there that morning.
I opened my car door. I got out to walk to the car in front of me to leave the donuts and card inside my nephew Brian's car. And Brian Albert came to the door. Brian Albert Sr. came to the door, and he told me to come in, asked me to come in for a second. And I said that I didn't need to. And he said, I'm just leaving this gift for Brian Jr. And he said, no, just come in for a second. So I went into the house.
And when you walk into 34 Fairview Road on that morning, if anyone else was there?
Nicole Albert, Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, Jennifer McCabe, and Matt McCabe.
And where were they in relation to the house?
In the kitchen.
And what, if anything, did they tell you at that time?
When I first walked in, nothing. Everyone was just sitting there, and I was looking around, and everyone was visibly upset. And I asked, what's going on? And another maybe 30 seconds went by, and Jen said, something's happened to John. And I said, John, she said, John O'Keefe. And I said, is he okay?
Objection.
No, I'm going to allow it.
I said, is he okay? And she said, we don't know. And that was that.
Let me bring in my guests. Joining me, Karen Reed supporter and expert Nick Rocco, criminal defense attorney Joseph Krowski Jr., and the YouTuber behind Yellow Cottage Tales, Kevin Lenahan. Great to see everyone tonight. Nick, let me ask you first, from your perspective, the donuts in the morning, everyone is there. That's when she finds out. What do you find significant about all of this?
Well, first off, you have all the witnesses that were somewhat involved in this, all congregating inside 34 Fairview Road, where nobody really knows what was said. But as far as the outcome of it, Jennifer McCabe ended up having Lieutenant Lank come back to the house, and that's when she said, oh, hey, come back to the house. I forgot to tell you something. So when he comes inside the house, she says, I forgot to tell you. I heard Karen say, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. So if you don't think that those people inside that house were coming up with a plan, then I would disagree with that, because at this moment, when they're all inside that house, Jennifer McCabe is now aware that Karen Reed's taillight is broken, because when Jennifer McCabe and Kerry Roberts picked Karen up at John's house, Karen saw, that was the first time she saw her taillight was broken, and she pointed it out to Jen and Kerry. So at that point, Jen knew it was broken, and when she went back to Brian Albert's house, I'm sure she told Brian Albert, hey, Karen's taillight was broken, and the plan began right there. So there was a reason why Lieutenant Lane came back to the house.
So this is significant for the defense. Kevin Lenahan, do you see anything unusual or nefarious about what's going on the morning after, as Julie's bringing the traditional 6 Dunkin' Donuts for her nephew for his birthday?
I think what it's important for people to do in any case, but certainly here, is try to look at these things from a both sides kind of way until you get all the evidence in. So you look at something like this. Is it possible that these are the master conspirators getting this story together? Okay, that's option A. But option B, does that make sense too? That Brian Higgins, who was, for instance, friends with John and had been partying with these guys, is it normal that he would be there the next day to find out what happened? Yes, it's normal. So both of those things have kind of equal weight until you look at the other evidence in the case. I think it's important not to try to fit everything into a conspiracy theory or another kind of theory that you've already bought into ahead of time. That makes sense.
Joseph, two things. One, I want your response to the gathering of the people, but
sure.
What also is significant to me, this is only like 8:30, and we've cleared the crime scene already?
Right. So let me deal with them in order. I think I saw Nick's tongue pushing his right cheek out. I don't know if he's nervous or lying. Look, if there's some sort of conspiracy to cover up a crime, they would have done it that night. They would have done it supposedly when they were going through these extravagant efforts to cover up the crime scene outside and construct what appeared to be a crime scene outside, and cover up one from inside. This is a normal reaction. They had just been out with that man. They had, by all accounts, been getting along with that man the night before. To find out that something happened and he was injured and later deceased out in the front lawn, I think it's a normal reaction to get together like that. Sure, the crime scene, I mentioned that last night. You would have expected, and again, this goes more to the negligence of the investigation. You would have expected that that crime scene would have been frozen pending a search warrant, and that the local police, in conjunction with the state police, would have done a much more robust grid and search and investigation of that crime scene. But that has nothing to do with some sort of purported cover-up. You know, every single detail that comes out, the other side seems to just have conjecture and speculation. There's no witnesses. If we would get some time, I'd love to go back to Chris Albert's testimony in the great anticlimactic thud of the so-called motive evidence against Colin Albert.
Oh, we'll get there. You're getting ready. You're producing tonight. Last night we brought on a director, Kevin. Tonight you're producing, which is great. So we'll get to that in the next segment. Let me play some more of Julie Albert's testimony. This time talking about what connection that she has to the Proctor family.
Prior to February 10th, no investigator from this case bothered to talk to you or your husband, correct?
Correct.
Now, in terms of the two investigators who did come, you knew one of them quite well, did you not?
I knew them. I wouldn't say quite well, but I knew them.
Okay, and when you say you knew them?
Him. I'm sorry, him.
Okay. And who was it that you knew?
Michael Proctor.
Michael Proctor was the brother of one of your close friends, correct?
Correct.
You're close friends with Courtney Proctor, correct?
I am.
Okay, Nick, how much of an issue is this, do you believe? The fact that Julie Albert's good friends with the investigator, the lead investigator, Trooper Proctor's sister?
Well, I think we've known this for a long time. It's just that finally Michael Proctor admitted to having these relationships due to the federal grand jury. But one thing that I find very interesting is in Julie Albert's police report to Michael Proctor, she stated that she was sleeping at 4:55 when she had been awoken by a missed call from Jen McCabe, and that is how she found out that John was dying. So she found out at 4:55 in the morning John was dying, but they didn't find him until 6:09. And Kevin, that's in her interview with Michael Proctor. You can read it. It's there. I know she changed her testimony today. It's there. Read it.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I've read it. I'm not going to go over that, but I want to bring up something that I'm glad Nick did bring up, which is the federal aspect of this here. Now, you may have noticed today that Yannetti pointed out to Julie that she had 67 calls in that 6-month period with Courtney Proctor. Now, I think that's actually pretty normal since this case affects both of them, or maybe they're just conspiring, right? But where did that information come from? The feds, okay? That if the feds got 6 months worth of data on Julie and Courtney, that means they also got it on everybody else. Colin, Brian Albert, Chris Albert, everybody involved here. And yet they found no evidence of a cover-up. No one is a target. No one is charged or anything. That federal investigation is inculpatory to Karen Reed.
Joseph, your thoughts about this connection? Is it troublesome? Is it a problem? Proctor, his sister, the Alberts, they know each other. He's the lead investigator here.
Well, certainly as a defense attorney, you love it, you embrace it, right? It is a problem because John O'Keefe deserved an investigation free from the appearance of impropriety. John O'Keefe deserved an investigation unfettered by any potential conflict of interest. And Karen Reed, a presumed innocent defendant, certainly deserved and has a constitutional right to an investigation without a conflicted chief investigator. So certainly it is a problem. Now, it's a leap to go from there to have the same trooper driving all over Canton, planting pieces of tail light and planting hairs from John O'Keefe's head. But certainly, yeah, it's a problem. It should have been disclosed, and he should have recused himself early on. Had he done that, the investigation and the prosecution is a lot cleaner. Had he done that, someone like Colin Albert, who's become collateral damage in this case, who's become a victim, there's no oxygen fed to that. I see Nick nodding his head, but we'll get to Colin Albert. I mean, the fact that 2 years later, not a single witness puts Colin Albert and John O'Keefe within even close proximity to one another that night, but yet people still go on and on and on in putting forward this nonsensical, derogatory insinuation that he had something to do with the death of John O'Keefe is just beyond the pale to me.
Okay, everyone stay where they are. Nick Rocco, Joseph Krause Jr., Kevin Lanahan. We're going to talk next about the so-called lawn feud. Was this a motive for what happened that night?
Can you explain for the jury who or what is Nebercracker?
What is Nebercracker?
Yes.
Like the character?
That's what I'm asking.
It's a character in a cartoon called Monster House.
Unbelievable testimony today. That Nebercracker is significant because Nebercracker is what the Alberts apparently referred to John O'Keefe as, and Julie had it in her phone, Nebercracker for John O'Keefe. We looked it up just to make sure. Take a look. This is Nebercracker. Right there, the old grouchy man from Monster House. It's a 2006 movie. He's known as a grouchy old man who shoos away anyone that sets foot on his lawn. You know, the cliche, grouchy old man, get off my lawn, right? So this became a thing today because it seems that the defense is leaning into a motive for an attack on John O'Keefe from Colin Albert because of something that was happening here when they were all neighbors. Take a listen.
He was the get off my lawn guy, correct?
In the movie, yeah.
What was your nickname and your wife Julie's nickname for John O'Keefe?
Mr. Nevercracker.
All right. And your wife Julie actually had John O'Keefe plugged into his contacts as Nevercracker, correct?
Correct.
In fact, you were there one time when Julie showed Karen Reed, her phone to show how John O'Keefe was plugged in as Nevercracker, correct?
I believe so.
And this whole nickname started because of a conflict that Colin Albert had with John O'Keefe.
Not correct.
John O'Keefe complained to you about things that Colin was doing.
Not correct.
He would tell you that Colin used to throw beer cans or beer bottles in his bushes, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
No, you can answer that. What's your answer to that?
That is not correct.
John O'Keefe told you that Colin used to flip him off, correct?
Not correct.
And say F you to him.
Never.
Colin used to cut through his yard.
Nope, that was Dylan.
You knew that John didn't like people cutting through his yard, correct?
No, I don't know that to be true. He ran across John's lawn one day. This is my littlest son, who I don't even know at the time. He might have been like 9, 10. I'm not sure exactly how old he was. And John yelled something to him. Hey, kid, get off my lawn. So John was just making a joke. So Dylan got scared. He ran home and told my wife, Julie, and John felt terrible. And John came down the street. John asked what kind of candy Dylan liked. And John brought Dylan a bag of candy and just said, hey, I was just kidding.
All right, let's start with Joseph Krowski Jr. on this one. He wanted first crack at Nevercracker tonight.
Sure.
What are your thoughts about this?
So first disclosure, I've mentioned it in previous shows, but just to remind, to the extent there's any new audience members, early on in this case, I had advised and legally represented Colin Albert because he had been subpoenaed to the grand jury. He went to the federal grand jury, did not assert the fifth, and testified without me being in the room. I no longer have a lawyer-client relationship with him. So this story started before today, right? Judge Cannone had required counsel for the defendant to make a showing, what we call legally an offer of proof at a motion in limine, a pretrial motion, to the evidence that they had supporting that Colin Albert was a potential third-party culprit. And what was represented on the record is he had evidence that he was going to demonstrate Colin Albert had gone through, walked on John O'Keefe's lawn without his permission at a time unknown on 1 or 2 occasions, had given him the finger and had thrown beer cans on his bushes. Well, and then Yannetti leaned right into it and forcefully opened with that. Unfortunately for him, I don't think he did his homework or he had misinformation. Chris Albert, I wish we had your body language expert still on, without hesitation, unequivocally, recalled the story. In fact, it was his son Dylan, who was only 9 or 10 years old at the time, which would have made this, 2018, 4 years before this incident, on a single occasion, had walked across his lawn. John O'Keefe had joked with him. He misinterpreted the joke, which led to John O'Keefe bringing him candy, and it became kind of a neighborhood joke. And that's what the picture is. Look, anyone that's lived in any of these cookie-cutter neighborhoods knows you do things like this. You have jokes, you have nicknames for your neighbors. But more compelling, on January 29, 2022, there couldn't have been much of a feud between the Alberts and John O'Keefe. Where did he go for lunch? He went to Chris Albert's pizza shop, ordered pizza, ate. I had a conversation, made plans with him to meet with him that night. That night, Chris Albert texted him, using a reference to the Nevercracker nickname, and said, where are you? Come on over and have drinks. So, and the audience needs to know that the whole question and answer where Chris Alberts denied it, did he ever give him the finger? No. Did he ever throw beer cans in his bushes? No. The answer is no. That means that is not in evidence. And I don't believe there's a single other witness that's going to come forward that's going to demonstrate any acrimony between Colin Albert and John O'Keefe.
Nick, what are your thoughts on this issue? This is, I think, a crucial issue for the defense.
Yeah, I personally believe that the timing that Colin arrived home is going to be crucial in this case. In the beginning of this case, everybody was saying that Colin Albert was never at the house to begin with. And then due to Brian Albert's grand jury testimony, he puts Colin at that house. Then the story changed to, well, yeah, he was at the house, but it was before John got there. So why is everybody trying to keep Colin's name out of this so much, to the point where Michael Proctor didn't even put him down in any of the reports? And then he gets interviewed, August of 2023, a year and a half later, after this whole thing happened. All of a sudden they bring Colin Albert into this situation, because I truly believe that Colin was in the house when John was there, and I truly believe that the defense is going to prove that when it's time to get to that.
Kevin?
What else came out today under the cross-examination? When Chris Albert was talking about the pictures they were taking earlier, this is a big mistake by David Yannetti. It came out that John had asked Chris and his family to keep an eye on their property when they went on vacation. You don't do that with someone that's an enemy. And the other thing is, I did agree with your body language that Chris was a little bit nervous, understandably so, talking about the time that Colin got home. But when you contrast with how he ended the testimony and talking about the Nevercracker stuff, you could see the genuine warmth and that he felt for John that came in that whole memory. And I think the jury's going to remember that.
Nick, do you think that there was animosity that night?
Which night? The night of...
The night at the waterfall.
Animosity between who, though? Between Chris and John? Are you talking Chris and John?
Yeah, any Albert and John O'Keefe.
I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know if there was animosity between them. As far as I know, there was no animosity between John and Karen, which to me proves that she didn't drive 5 minutes down the road, like I said last night, and all of a sudden they turned from lovey-dovey to, I'm going to murder him in front of a Boston police officer home. I mean, as far as the relationship between Chris and John, I personally don't believe that is too relevant, because Chris wasn't even at the house.
Gotcha.
So when John walked into the house and Colin was in there, I believe they had words, or potentially him and Brian had words.
We are out of time. No more words tonight.